Hey guys, I just received the news yesterday on the internet that David Lynch, mighty hero, film director, when he was alive, he was known as one of the greatest film directors after Stanley Kubrick was gone at least. One of my heroes, real influence on me, influence on many video games. He has died. He's pretty much died of smoking by the sounds of it. So I just wanted to comment on his influence on me. Just seemed like the right thing to do. If you haven't looked at David Lynch's stuff, the most obvious thing is that he was a film director and he made movies that were weird, but that doesn't really do justice to them, I think, and we'll get into why they're weird in a bit. He pretty much died from smoking, basically. I mean, that's not that surprising. He was 78 and he loved smoking. I think he quit for 20 years or something, but he loved smoking. His movies are full of references to smoking. Loads of characters smoke. And, he thought it was an integral part of the art life, so I'm not sure he really regrets smoking like he did. It just seems like that was the sacrifice he was willing to make. It's funny, because the last time I did anything like this, I wrote a blog post about Kentaro Miura, the guy who does Berserk, when he died, and something I noticed was, this is kind of spoilers for Berserk, but in Berserk there's the idea of evil, which is a big heart with eyes on it, and Kentaro Miura was known to have a dodgy heart, and he died of a heart attack. And so it's just, my point, I guess, being that it seems like the artists kind of know what's going to kill them, they know. And so, you get hearts in Berserk, and you get lots and lots of cigarettes in David Lynch's case. So how did I, as mostly a video game guy, find David Lynch? I remember there being little references to him in the background, like I looked at a review of Killer 7, and Killer 7's pretty weird. I actually say it's weirder than David Lynch's stuff, by the way, but just compare that to David Lynch. And by the way, I have black coffee today. Normally I don't, but normally I have my bland milky coffee, but today it's black coffee in honor of Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And then there's things like Alan Wake, which are blatantly influenced by Twin Peaks. If you've got a game or any kind of show about a small town with those trees and everything, that's probably a David Lynch thing. I know David Lynch loved trees. He's on record saying that wood is a blessing for humanity, and he had his dad was in some kind of government logging thing, I think. So David Lynch and trees and wood go way back. And also, there's lots of references to Twin Peaks and Max Payne, which is kind of where I started with this. It's kind of about the television, so they've got extra little things happening in televisions in Max Payne, and one of the weird sketches they have is just blatantly Twin Peaks. They got the red curtains from the Black Lodge and everything, and that's sort of, I didn't really get it, but at least that introduced me to Twin Peaks in some backhanded way. And then I played Deadly Premonition, which is pretty much just some Japanese guy wanted to make Twin Peaks the video game, please. And that's what you end up with. I mean, there's even a character in there who looks just like Naomi Watts, and I feel like they kind of owe her money for that, but whatever. So lots of people have just wanted to make Twin Peaks the video game, basically. And following all these clues, I think particularly just wanting to know what the hell Deadly Premonition was on about, I got a Twin Peaks DVD box set when that suddenly came out. I think they were warming up for Season 3, or they were talking about Season 3. And this was in, like, the 2000s or the 2010s or something. It was a while ago, but they were warming up for Season 3, and the original Twin Peaks was a 90s TV show. So I caught up with that. I've seen all of Season 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks, even the dodgy episodes that David Lynch didn't have enough to do with. I've seen it all. I think after that I got the box set of David Lynch's stuff. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. You may have seen this in the background of my videos before, just so you know I'm not just jumping on this. Like, this is, this has been there in the background the whole time. You can see this in my older videos. So boy, what can you really say about David Lynch's movies in general? I mean, they're sort of wholesome on one level. I mean, he's very keen on dark underbellies. I think Blue Velvet is pretty obviously about dark underbellies. They really lay that out for you. There's a lot of emotions, a lot of weird characters, and a few kind of wholesome characters stuck in the weirdness, I'd say. It's tough to summarize his movies, but I'm gonna try. And I should say that they're not just weird for their own sake either. Like, one of my least favourite opinions about David Lynch is that he's pretentious, or his movies are just deliberately weird for weirdness' sake. And that is completely wrong. Like, I can see why somebody who is clueless might think so. But no, they're weird because of an honest commitment to his ideas. And I'll get more into why they're weird later as well. So, also, I just had this experience ages ago, and I was looking at the box set. I mean, we've got what? We've got, like, Blue Velvet, Dune, Eraserhead, Lost Highway, the Twin Peaks movie, which annoyed many people by being a prequel, and Wild at Heart. And I looked at this, and I thought, in most of these movies, something nasty happens to someone's head. And it happens in Season 3 of Twin Peaks as well. People's heads get squished. Spoilers for that. Season 3 of Twin Peaks I also like. But yeah, it just seems like David Lynch, I guess, felt like he had a duty to depict the dark side of life, and that means squishing some heads once in a while. So just be prepared. Part of the David Lynch drinking game for me is people's heads being squished. And it's not that that's all that happens. His stuff is not cynical particularly, but heads are going to get squished sometimes. And then once I knew more about David Lynch's stuff, some of the influences got a lot more obvious, like Silent Hill 2, and this is kind of, come on, it's Silent Hill 2, but the scene where James hides in the closet from Pyramid Head is straight out of Blue Velvet, right down to the gunshots, the closet, and you could say maybe there's a connection between Pyramid Head and the character of Frank Booth even, but yeah, so there's just huge influences there. I think quite a bit about what James did, let's say that much, might have something to do with Lost Highway, let's just say. The videotapes and what happens in them might be a bit of a Lost Highway thing, let's just say that much. And doppelgangers as well. If there's any doppelgangers, which there are in Silent Hill, just look to David Lynch, I think, because if anything, I think his love of doppelgangers only intensified over time, because he had... he had regular doppelgangers in Season 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks, then in Season 3 there's tulpas as well, which are just a whole new kind of doppelganger. So there's kind of double doppelgangers, just more. I'm not sure there's any real people left in the show at all, really. It's just very confusing. And so this all led me ultimately to interviews with David Lynch himself, and this is where I think a lot of people hit a real learning curve, because you watch these weird movies and they're interesting, and normally your rationalistic brain hungers for some kind of explanation. You want a theory that explains what David Lynch was really thinking when he made this movie and what's going on. And part of the trouble is that I think David Lynch interviews sort of badly. He doesn't give a conventional good interview at all. Like, what I think is happening is he doesn't really favour verbal communication whatsoever. He's a painter and a filmmaker first and foremost. I think he goes back to painting by default, or, he did. He was a painter, and in the interviews you kind of see him scrunching up his eyes and, like, translating what he's saying into words as though it's a second language for him. So I think that explains a lot. And he's on record saying that after you've made a movie, everyone harangues you and interviews you and wants you to do a bunch of talking. And he says the film is the talking. So I think that's a big clue to what's going on. It's just, if you're looking for some kind of tidy, rationalistic, verbal explanation of his work, it's not really there. It's not really there to be found, even. And that may be annoying to some people, but there is no secret that he's hiding. He's not hiding anything. It's all there. And part of the reason Lynch was a hero of mine was it helps that he's cheerful. I credit the TM for that, the Transcendental Meditation. We really are about to get into that. He was a proper artist. He did what he wanted. By all accounts, everybody loved working with him. I mean, this isn't just like Hollywood fluff. We liked working with him either. I know, like, everyone's nice to each other in Hollywood, aren't they? Until they're not. Until the accusations come out or something, and then it's... I'm fairly sure, I hope this doesn't age badly, but I'm fairly sure David Lynch never did anything terrible. And by all accounts, everybody loved working with him. I'll have a link to a video with Naomi Watts and stuff, I think. Just, it sounds like he was a real sweetheart to work with. He was a real sort of 50s gentleman about things, really. He was a bit of a 50s guy. And yeah, he was good to work with. He wasn't some ruthless Hollywood asshole or something. He also had a very nasal voice, which is a comfort to those of us who also have nasal voices. So now we finally get to the Transcendental Meditation stuff, because if you look at interviews with David Lynch, he's kind of tight-lipped by design about the movies, but the one thing he does like to talk about is Transcendental Meditation, which is a kind of meditation taught by, first by Guru Dev and then by Maharishi, if you want to look those things up. And one of my principles is don't study the masters, study what the masters studied. So I ended up looking up TM, just independent of him even. There's a David Lynch Foundation that he was involved with funding and active in that was designed to spread transcendental meditation around the world to promote peace or something. Yeah, and this is where I think you really do get a clue to where he was coming from, because one of the features of TM is that it's supposed to be innocent, and I think that differentiates it from a couple of other kinds of meditation. It gets complicated, but yeah, TM is innocent, and the idea is that if thoughts come, you let them come, and that's kind of how he operated. Like, if he had weird ideas, like, let's have a demon called Bob, and let's put them behind the furniture and have them hide behind the furniture, he went with it, and that's... So I think what we finally see is the influence of his meditation on how he made movies, or maybe he went to that kind of meditation because that's how he thought anyway, I don't know. But he did it for decades, I know, like twice a day, 20 minutes a day, and it was a big deal. And I gotta say, now I do TM twice a day, 20 minutes a day, one thing I've noticed that seems very kind of Twin Peaks Season 3, I may have a whole separate video about this, is I enjoy my breakfast more, which is an actual theme, probably, in Season 3 of Twin Peaks. I've seen an article about that, at least. If you look at the bad guys, they do not enjoy their breakfast. And so that was always one of David Lynch's points. I think he liked to just enjoy daily life. I even had a David Lynch dream one time. I had a John Carpenter dream before that, but I actually had a dream with David Lynch in it. I'll have a link to the blog post I wrote about this. I won't go over it now, but he was... yeah, he was teaching a masterclass, and I was in his masterclass. And, yeah, anyway, so a link to that blog post if you want to know how David Lynch appears in people's dreams. Which is kind of appropriate, because, dreams were always a big theme in his stuff. Now, if you want to see, if you either want to reminisce about David Lynch's life, or you want a clue to what he was, you've never heard of David Lynch much before, and you just want some clues, I've left another link to a lovely video that kind of gives you an 8-minute summary of him, I think. And there's also, I can't believe I found this so late, but there's one video that I think really clues you in to how he thinks. And it's the frog moth story. You will know if you've heard it, I think. He was cooking quinoa. I think it's like a DVD special feature or something. But it's a video where he cooks some quinoa, and then he goes off and tells this story about frog moths coming out of the ground, and then he goes and cooks the quinoa at the end. And the point is, the story kind of plays out like a David Lynch movie. It's him and his pal Jack Nance, and some lady Jack Nance has picked up, and they're on a train in the dark in some country, and David Lynch likes darkness, I know. And they go buy some alcohol in a tent, and then frog moths come out of the ground, big moths the size of frogs. And then they go and have a Diet Coke somewhere or something. And maybe it doesn't sound interesting. Trust me, it's interesting the way he tells it. And somehow this all takes place like one of his movies. So I think that frog moth story really is the key to a lot of things. And I think what it proves is that, yeah, David Lynch was not pretentious. He was not faking anything. Those movies really showed how he saw the world. And not everyone takes to it, but a lot of people clearly did. So, this is kind of a big deal. There's a lot else I could say. I've watched a lot of his stuff, but ultimately, yeah, I think I'll leave the video there. Just goodbye, David Lynch. See you in the White Lodge.